Once the bill essentially recreating the U.S. Army was passed by Congress and signed into law by George Washington, and after Washington selected Anthony Wayne to be in charge of this revitalized army, it remained to figure out how to configure this new army. And Secretary of War Henry Knox decreed that this revitalized regular army should be called the Legion of the United States, organized according to a system suggested by Washington's drill master, Baron von Steuben, back in 1784. Steuben believed that this organization, this Legion organization I'm going to tell you about, would be better suited to the unique demands of campaigning in the forests north of the Ohio River, where tremendous amount of foliage, trees, and very little in the way of roads. Now, the Legion officially numbered 5,000 men in all. In practice, as usually is the case, the numbers were slightly low. But it was divided into 4 sub-legions of 1,250 men each. And each sub-legion was commanded by a brigadier general. And this helped Wayne in terms of command and control because, many of the duties of commanding and controlling the elements of his force on a day-to-day basis were in the hands of these competent brigadier generals, so he could give them general instructions, and they would follow them for him. So, and each sub-legion had infantry, cavalry, and artillery, all combined into one. So they were self-contained, units. Each one had ground troops. Each one had soldiers who could fight on horseback. Each one had artillerists and cannon. And this is sort of the forerunner of the modern combined arms force, which is considered to be sort of optimal in terms of battlefield effectiveness. Now, this new Legion of the United States underwent a considerable degree of training back east in a village designated, appropriately enough, Legionville. And only after a period of intensive training did the Legion go out to Fort Washington, where years before, St. Clair had launched his own disastrous expedition, and from which Wayne was going to have to launch his. Wayne would have liked to have begun his offensive in the springtime, when he would have had the maximum amount of good time with good weather to conduct the operations that he needed to do. But he was forced to delay launching the campaign in order to give a rather hopeless effort to negotiate a peace settlement with Little Turtle and his compatriots to just try to head off this next war without it occurring. There were many Americans who were still pretty shell-shocked by what had happened to St. Clair, and they were looking to avoid a second war if it could possibly be done. Anthony Wayne never had any confidence that these negotiations were going to succeed, and that I think he was quite correct. But the delay meant that Wayne had to embark on his campaign at roughly the same time that St. Clair had begun his own disastrous expedition. And although ordered to proceed cautiously ahead, Wayne was both impatient and spoiling for a fight with the Indians, and he advanced all the way to the site of St. Clair's defeat, and he did this in the dead of winter. When his troops reached the old battlefield on Christmas Day, 1793, they found the skeletons of hundreds of unburied soldiers. And after resting overnight, they began the grisly task of collecting the remains of the mostly unknown dead and burying them in mass graves. Those not detailed to bury bodies were instructed to locate the cannon left behind when St. Clair's surviving troops were forced to escape. Most of these cannon were recovered, and 3 of them were incorporated into a new fort that Wayne had ordered to be constructed, a large blockhouse surrounded by a wooden palisade. And you're looking here at the reconstructed stockaded palisade here now. When these necessary tasks were completed, the burial of the dead, the recovery of the cannon, the construction of the new fort, Wayne gave the new fort a heavily symbolic name, Fort Recovery. What I want to show you next is a video that I found online. I do a lot of poking around to see if there's anything useful that I can find there. This is once again a video that was done for students taking the American Placement Test in U.S. History, and I've queued it up to the point where it does us some good, and it provides a good overview of the Battle of Fallen Timbers, because after staying at Fort Recovery for a number of months and actually fending off various Native American raids, on August 17th, Wayne began his advance northward, intent on securing finally his ultimate objective of Kekianga. And then at an area called Fallen Timbers, so called because a cyclone had blown down this forest of trees some years before, he encountered the forces under Little Turtle. So let the fellow teaching the advanced placement U.S. history students, let him tell the rest of the tale.
Well, George Washington doesn't like the fact that the United States is not doing very well, and he starts ordering that we need to protect the settlers and enforce U.S. sovereignty over this region. We need to handle this situation. St. Clair's defeat and the other battle that happened the year prior, the Americans are asking and demanding that something be done. George Washington turns to General nicknamed Mad Anthony Wayne. General Anthony Wayne was an American Revolutionary War hero, and he starts training people to go into this region, organizing them, training them, giving them the proper fighting skills to defeat the Native American resistance. And that, of course, is going to take place in 1794. Unfortunately for our Native American homies, it is the Battle of Fallen Timbers, which is the final battle of the Western Confederacy, attempting to stop the encroachment upon their land in this northwestern territory. Battle of Fallen Timbers, it is a decisive defeat for the Native Americans, and it will be the last major battle. Not too long after the Battle of Fallen Timbers, you will have the Treaty of Greenville, in which the Native Americans in the region will give up huge tracts of land in the Old Northwest, much of present-day Ohio, all the way up into the Great Lakes region. In exchange for the Treaty of Greenville, the United States government will give $20,000 to the tribes of the area, but like many treaties, many of the provisions will be ignored as the years go on. And unfortunately, story will not have a happy ending for the Native people in this region, because here you could see roughly by 1783 where U.S. settlers had occupied, and over the next couple of decades, all the way up into 1850, there will be a steady progression of loss of land for the Native people in this region. That does it for today and the Battle of Fallen Timbers and the Treaty of Greenville. If you like the video, click like, tell a friend, hug a stranger, and subscribe to Joe's Productions. Peace out, homies.
I mean, how can you not like that? Okay, I got one more video for you. This one.
In this video,
hey, shut up. Okay. This one is a scene from Tecumseh, The Last Warrior, made in 1995. Tecumseh was present at the Battle of Fallen Timbers. And so this scene I included to give you a graphic sense of what this battle was actually like. I really think that there's just no substitute for having a strong descriptive sense of what's going on. When things lay flat on the paper or or simply spoken in a lecture, I think you lose something important. I just sort of value history enough to use all the tools at my disposal to bring it to life. Now, what you're going to find at the end of this sequence is you will find the Native Americans rushing up to a British fort. It's actually called Fort Miami, and it had been constructed actually to try to deter Wayne's advance northward, because notwithstanding the fact that the British were on American soil illegally, it was kind of like, yeah, what you got to do about it? And so the fort was present. It was apparently present to support the Native Americans. And so what you're going to find is that when the battle goes badly for the Native American force, they're going to try to take refuge in that British Fort Miami, and you can see what the results of that are. Okay.
Militia? Something's wrong.
I know.
Where is Wayne's army? Wait.
You'll hit our own men! Hold your line! Hold it back, steady! Hold it! Hold it together, man!
Ride to the fort! Alert them! So that we may fall back and fight the Long Knives from their walls. Go! Now! Brothers, be strong! Be strong!
Something's gone wrong. We may have to retreat.
Close the gate.
We will fall back to the fort and fight from the walls. Prepare your soldiers, please. We have an agreement. Campbell, you son of a bitch!
no allies. They're white faces. They're cowards.
Okay. Now here is a map that that illustrates the results of the Treaty of Greenville, and the Treaty of Greenville is named for Fort Greenville. It's now a little wayside over. If you look northwest of Dayton, you'll see it there, Greenville. The dotted line that comes out of Indiana gets to Fort Recovery, and then cuts generally east across Ohio until it turns north at Akron, and then ends up at Cleveland. Everything south of that is what the Native Americans surrendered. And quite a number of Native Americans were involved with this, agreed to it. They were dismayed by not only the defeat, the magnitude of the defeat that they'd suffered at Fallen Timbers. Anthony Wayne's Legion of the United States was a lot better than St. Clair's pathetic troops, and they defeated Little Turtle and the other forces in about an hour. So that was distressing enough. Then to discover that the British, whom they had counted upon for support, were not going to be supportive, convinced many that further resistance was useless. And so Blue Jacket, for example, became one of the signers of the Treaty of Greenville. The text of the treaty, which I'm going to place online where you can have a look at it, just go skim through it, is quite extensive. It goes into great detail, and it talks about henceforth all hostilities shall cease, peace is hereby established and shall be perpetual, and a friendly intercourse shall take place between the said United States and Indian tribes. That sounds just great, except for the fact that it didn't take too many years for the United States government to completely renege on this Treaty of Greenville. And the Native Americans, by the mid 1840s, were gone, had been forcibly removed from the state of Ohio. So, so much for promises. Okay, we'll stop there. There is a documentary, a PBS documentary about Tecumseh, the great Shawnee visionary who wanted to continue the struggle against the Anglo-Americans, had an idea about how to do it, implemented it with great determination, only to see that particular vision come apart in the end. But his story is very compelling, and the documentary that I want you to watch tells the story from the point of view of the Native Americans, and that, after all, is a critical point of view, and we do not want to have it missing from the story. So by all means, be sure to watch that. And for the present, I bid you an affectionate farewell.